One of the biggest secrets to success in blockchain is just being early, like being one of the first people that catches a massive trend before it takes off. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, has been a huge trend, and we've seen a number of 100x projects in that space over the last year. But a lot of people missed out on that trend. And so that begs the question, like, what are the next sleeping giants that can fuel the next 100x blockchain trend? So I've invited the one and only Anthony Sassano on my channel today to talk about that. He's going to talk about the spaces that you need to pay attention to. So before we get into that, if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash the like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to master blockchain step by step from start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. So welcome to the channel, Anthony.
Hey, Greg, how you going?
Yeah, it's going well, man. Super excited to have you on today. So I've got Anthony here to talk about, like, what are the next hot things that you need to watch out for in the blockchain space? Because, we're kind of in the middle of this DeFi craziness, and maybe it's cooling off a little bit. Maybe we're going to, go up some more. But I want to hear about Anthony's perspective because, he's in the trenches watching this stuff every single day, working with ETHub, working with Set. So I'm super excited to talk about this.
Yeah, same, man. I mean, as you said, like, DeFi has been really hot lately. It might be cooling down a little bit now, but there are a lot of other things happening within, I guess, Ethereum and the wider crypto space that I think people need to be paying attention to. And yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of things to talk about. He and I chatted for a few minutes before we started recording this video. So there's a couple different things, but what do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, I guess we can talk about the NFT space, the non-fungible token space, which is something that people relate to, I guess, the gaming space on top of these networks. But I wanted to kind of expand on that because I think it goes way beyond gaming.
Yeah, totally. So, for all the developers that are watching out there, we've done videos on this channel about NFTs, like show you how to even code your own ERC-721 tokens for like collectibles and gaming, all that stuff. So I've got some videos on the channel if you're curious about like learning more about what those are and how they work. But yeah, NFTs are such a huge part of blockchain. We have ERC-20 tokens, which basically represent money. And then we have these other tokens that represent things besides money. And that's what Anthony's talking about here.
Yeah. So I guess for those who don't know, NFT just stands for non-fungible token. What this means is basically a unique token. So for example, ERC-20s are not unique. They are basically interchangeable. So, my link token is the same as someone else's link token, right? They're not unique. Whereas with a non-fungible token, it is unique. So that's why people say, okay, there's like items in games, like collectibles, there's like art pieces that are NFTs. There's all these things, but it can be expanded beyond that, right? So we're actually seeing people produce NFTs for things like insurance products. So say you want to buy like insurance or cover on a DeFi protocol to protect yourself against like a hack or something, right? Someone can sell you, say, hey, here's $1 million insurance policy that you can buy off me for X amount of dollars, and it's like an NFT, and you store that in your wallet, and that's your insurance policy, right? So right. there's all these things coming around that anything that's basically unique and that needs a unique identifier is what the NFT space covers. And it's really heating up lately. Like there's a lot of platforms now where you can go and buy and sell these things like Rarible and OpenSea. There's a few other marketplaces, and you just do it all from your Ethereum wallet like you normally would any other token, which is super exciting right now.
Yeah, and it seems like the price is starting to follow the hype on some of that stuff. Because doesn't Nexus Mutual, isn't that how they do NFTs?
So Nexus Mutual is the insurance platform or the cover platform, but someone actually figured out a way to basically tokenize it into NFTs. So Nexus Mutual doesn't support it themselves, but because the platform has KYC, people are like, well, I don't want to do KYC. I want to, just be able to do it like I normally would any other token. So people found a way around it to start tokenizing this cover. So it's a little bit murky there, but there are projects spinning up now as kind of, I guess you would call them competitors to Nexus Mutual, where they're like, okay, well, we want KYC-less insurance and cover on these things. How can we do it? And NFTs are like the perfect use case.
Gotcha. Yeah, and Rarible, yeah, you're talking about that, and that was something that kind of caught my radar lately, and seems like a lot of other people's radar too.
Yeah. These marketplaces are just great because, you can obviously just go on there, have like a bit of art that you've made or a gaming item or an insurance kind of product here. And then you can go on there and buy and sell these things, just like you would buy and sell any other token. So people are getting really excited about that. Rarible is unique because they'll actually pay you out in their own token for buying and selling at the moment. So it's kind of like how you see yield farming in DeFi, but this is like yield farming for NFTs, which is really great. So, and as I mentioned, another platform, OpenSea, is kind of the same thing where you can buy and sell. And yeah, it's amazing because you don't even need to like list your assets on there. It'll just read it from your wallet, and then it'll tell you like estimated price, like what you can sell it for, and then you can create your own unique pieces on there. So yeah, it's really heating up, especially I guess the gaming space. I mean, the gaming NFT collectibles as well, like Axie Infinity, for those who have heard of it, Gods Unchained. These games, you buy and sell these things on chain as well, which is really cool. But I think as well why it's heating up now is because traditionally it's been really expensive on chain because of the gas fees to trade these things, right? So if you've got like an item that's worth like $5 and it's going to cost you $10 to trade it, then obviously no one's going to do that. But we have a lot of layer 2 scaling and sidechain scaling technology coming that's going to scale these things like 100 times. So you only have to pay like a few pennies for a transaction fee, and that's why another reason why I think it's heating up a lot lately as well.
Yeah, very cool. So I'm super excited to see that. And I mean, gaming is one of those sectors where it's just ready, especially if scaling, if we solve some of the scaling issues, especially in the short term on maybe more application specific scaling solutions, like that's one area where you could just see a huge adoption happen really fast. Because I mean, think about all the games out there that have such huge user bases, you know what I mean? And then like gamers, I feel like take to crypto pretty naturally because they just enjoy the challenges. They like new technology, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you've got somebody with a bunch of users, the users could easily migrate to this, and it's just like, boom.
Yeah, exactly. And the only decentralized part of it really has to be the items, right?
Right.
You can still run the game on a centralized server for now until we get more scaling technology out there where you can actually run the game on a decentralized platform. But and then you can just freely trade these items like you would there are some centralized video games like Counter-Strike Source, for example, and Dota 2, like all these games on the Steam platform where you can actually go on their marketplace and buy and sell already. But yeah, it's centralized. It's not interoperable with Ethereum, right? You can't do this on like Uniswap and things like that. So I think that's another thing that's really exciting is that we can actually put these items into different things on Ethereum, right? It's not a closed ecosystem. It's like totally open. So super exciting stuff coming down the line.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see that. Yeah, so definitely NFTs, that encompasses the gaming space. It encompasses the insurance and the collectible items, all that kind of stuff that we talked about. So also ENS, I mean, that's another part of this, right?
Yeah. So ENS, the Ethereum name service. So for those of you who see on maybe on Twitter and stuff, you see like .eth in people's Twitter names. So, for example, I have sassel.eth, and you can actually just send me cryptocurrency to my Ethereum wallet using sassel.eth. You don't need to use like that long kind of like Ethereum address. You just use that. And as I said, because NFTs are unique, every ENS is also an NFT. So you can actually buy and sell these names with people on OpenSea or Rarible and things like that. It's a unique identifier for your name. So as I said, this goes way beyond like gaming items, like anything unique that you want to make a representation of on Ethereum, you can use the NFT standard.
Yeah, totally. And for people who are in the pilot project from a program, Blockchain Mastery University, we did NFT authentication. So it's basically like when you signed up, you got an NFT that represented your membership, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Exactly. That's another thing. Membership tokens, right? Like unique membership tokens or like unique achievement points and things like that, or achievements that you can to send people to someone's Ethereum wallet, and like unique keys, like, you have a key in your wallet, you can access this app or you can access this app, and it's cryptographically secure. Passwordless entry into things as well is part of the NFT world. So yeah, it's just a huge space, and we're going to see this explode over the next few months, I think.
Yeah, I think you are right in that we need scaling in order for this to make sense. And I feel like everybody really wants DeFi to work. And so now we really want scaling to happen now. Like basically we have a reason to get scaling out the door like yesterday. And so I think that was sort of the impetus to sort of light the match under our butts to get scaling to work. And that's going to make NFTs work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you need to show that there's demand there before people will be willing to build that infrastructure, right? And that's always been my belief. And now the gas prices are high. Everyone's focused on scaling. You know, some people got priced out of the kind of like the use cases, like NFTs actually got priced out for a little while. But now with the scaling tech coming on board, we're going to see this renaissance basically come back to this space, I think.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, man.
Yeah. So, the next thing I want to talk about is sort of decentralized web or D-web. And that's something that, people who've been watching this channel probably already know some about just by experience and working with it, because I do so many tutorials on this channel. I show you to build things with like IPFS and smart contracts and all that stuff, right? But you may not be aware of this sort of D-Web name as a thing that people are going to start talking about really soon. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so D-Web or decentralized web or Web3, as it's commonly referred to as well, is this whole suite of products. And it's basically a way to decentralize the entire internet. So typically people refer to like decentralized Facebook or decentralized Twitter, right? Decentralized file storage, all that sort of stuff. And as you mentioned, IPFS is one solution there, where you have decentralized file storage, and then you can put web servers on it as well and host your website in a decentralized way. For people that may be unfamiliar with how this would look, you can think of like torrents, right? BitTorrent, for example, right? Where you can download files from a distributed set of peers all around the world, from basically peer-to-peer. So you don't have to actually rely on a central party to feed you the data. And that's what the centralized web space is doing. And the reason why I think it hasn't taken off so far is because it's more of a long-term thing that needs to be researched and developed properly. And we need the scaling tech to be there as well for this to actually work. So for me, the Web3, the D-Web vision has always been longer term. I was always most bullish on like DeFi and the monetary aspects of these things first. And the D-Web stuff came second. So now we have like a lot of projects tackling this. We have Filecoin, which is basically the same team who built IPFS as well. We have something called Arweave as well. We have a bunch of different products that make it a lot easier to build on IPFS and these other technologies like Fleek. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but that's another product that lets you quickly deploy these things as well. There's just, we have, in the Ethereum space, we have Swarm, it's called, which has been around for a while, but is now picking back up again. So there's all these technologies that are rapidly coming out now, because I think the DeFi space, we know where we want it to go, basically. We know that we need to get scaling out there, but we know how to build these things now. And it's not a solved thing, but we generally know the direction that we're going. Right. Now people are like, what else can we do, right? Can we decentralize the entire stack? Because a lot of these DeFi apps actually live on centralized web servers, right? The front ends, the interfaces. The smart contracts are decentralized, which is the back end, but the front end is still very centralized. So can we get that onto a distributed network? Can we decentralize that? That's the holy grail. And that's why I think the decentralized web space is getting a lot more exciting now.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I've done some full stack tutorials on this channel where, you do back ends that are completely with smart contracts and then front ends that are completely with like IPFS and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that it works really well for a tutorial, you know what I mean, to kind of like understand how it works. But the goal is to get that to where it's fast. It feels just like you're building, something with AWS or something like that through Cloudflare, you know what I mean, with like load balancers and all this stuff. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting when that technology, when we start competing with that technology at that level. So that's something to look forward to for sure. And I think you're right. I think DeFi it made sense for that to be the first thing, because I mean, people are looking to get rich fast. You know what I mean? It's sort of like we had a really good reason to figure out those use cases first, because there's such a huge honeypot sitting there for like somebody to just crack open. And then all these projects came out, we have this yield farming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that I was predicted that would be like the thing that started this all, but it makes sense. I mean, of course it makes sense in hindsight, but I think it just makes sense with, how the space works. And yeah, I think you're right. I think we're looking at other use cases and how can we bring those up to that same level, that 0 to 1 moment, so to speak, of that sort of product market fit where the user experience is good enough to where, we get a big surge of adoption.
Yeah, yeah. And the way I view it is like total addressable market, right? Like, what is the addressable market for finance? Well, that's the whole world, basically, right? Everyone wants finance products. Everyone wants to make money, right? That, you have like 8 billion people ready to adopt your product, or at least the ones who have kind of access to the internet. But
Right.
no one's really hammering at the door for a decentralized Facebook, like in mass, right? It's not like, you tell someone, oh, this is Facebook, but decentralized. Like if I told my mom that, she wouldn't care, right? But yeah, exactly. No one really cares. But the point is that now that we have these other products that people do care about, they're using, and then they're seeing the pitfalls of centralization with these products. Like a lot of people, every time like a DeFi front end goes down, right? They're like, wow, like I don't know what to do now, right? Like it's down. I have to wait for the company to put it back up. Yes, you can get your funds back, but it's like a manual process. You have to do some technical stuff and everything. So people are cluing into the fact that you want to care about these things for certain use cases, and that'll eventually bleed out into the mainstream cases like the Facebooks and the Twitters and all the social medias, I think. But that's a longer term thing. I think what we're going to see first is these DeFi apps quickly deploy decentralized front ends to this distributed web in a highly available way. Because as you mentioned, no one really wants to do it on IPFS right now because there's still kinks there, right? You need high availability, you need load balancing, you need ways to interact with your middleware, basically. Like the Graph, for example, is a middleware project that every DeFi project pretty much uses, and that's going to be decentralized as well. Currently they're centralized, but they're planning to have like a whole network of nodes that decentralize this out. So we're actually getting closer and closer to that vision. It was just building out the infrastructure, and to build out the infrastructure, you need to show that there was demand for it, which is what DeFi did, in my mind.
Right. Yeah, I think that's well put. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So speaking of infrastructure, that does seem like another frontier that's ripe for innovation and needs innovation in order for this whole thing to work. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned, it's coming because there's demand, and the systems are buckling under the demand, right? The gas prices on Ethereum are extremely high for most use cases. It's pricing out use cases like NFTs, as I mentioned. Well, at least it priced it out for a while. But now we have more scaling technology going live and being announced over the last few months than we ever had in Ethereum or in crypto's history, basically. Real decentralized scaling technology, because there's been efforts at this before where it's like, okay, we'll just do something like distributed proof of stake or DPoS, where we have these super nodes that are managed by like a small group of validators, and that's how we scale. But that didn't really take off because everyone's like, well, this is just like what we already have, right? With like Amazon, for example, right? They have a bunch of distributed super nodes, right? And you can just work off that, and it's all centrally controlled and everything. Whereas with the technologies we have going live now, the layer 2 tech on Ethereum actually inherits the security from Ethereum. So it basically is still decentralized. There are some centralization vectors that are slowly getting worked out and that are very transparent, and you know what they are. But without, if I was to go into the technicals of it, it's about like data availability. So someone can withhold the data of a layer 2 kind of implementation from you, and that's how they can kind of basically attack you. Because if you need the data to basically verify that your funds are safe, and they're withholding the data, and they're the only one who have that data, then you have to wait for them to post it, or you have to do a bunch of little funky stuff in layer 2 to get your funds back and to be able to withdraw. But that's where the decentralized web comes in, where we can store this data across like a whole decentralized web of kind of like databases and on file storage solutions and things like that, so that no one can withhold your data. It's actually spread out, and it's spread out in a way where it's cryptographically secured by the network, basically. So that's all the infrastructure slowly coming together now, that we're going to actually achieve that vision of fully decentralized everything. There's no central choke points, basically, because that is the grand vision. Because we taking shortcuts to get there with DPoS and things like that just does not fix anything in the long term, because we've already seen these things turn into like cartels, right? Where they actually control the chain because they're just paying each other to control it, basically, and bribing each other and stuff like that. So this is why the infrastructure is getting a lot better. And we have things like side chains as well coming out. Side chains are, pretty centralized. They run on DPoS as well. But for like, I guess they call it the lower value use cases, you can go on there and do things. Like if you've just got, something like you want to have, this has been done at a lot of Ethereum events where you have like food trucks, for example, right? And then the event gives you like a bunch of DAI or ETH, and you can go buy, you can use that on your wallet at these food trucks. That's done on like a side chain, for example. So it's a low value. It's not like thousands of dollars. It's like tens of dollars.
Right.
Yeah. And whereas layer 2 is going to handle a lot more value. It's going to handle potentially billions of dollars. So you need that to be secure, right? You can't have a central party managing billions of dollars who can just run away with it. Because we've seen what happens with centralized exchanges all the time, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's well put. So as far as scaling goes, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you have any promising projects that you think are going to like crack this nut first, or are there ones that you think have some good progress that you're excited about? Can you share any of that?
Yeah, so some of these things are already live. So Loopring and Diversify, they're two decentralized exchanges. They're running on a technology called ZK Rollup, or Rollups, as people have heard about them before. And in addition to that, Gitcoin is another platform. It's like a donation platform where people can go donate to projects that they like within, I guess, the Ethereum space. They actually went live today with a new technology called ZK Sync, which basically is made for payments. So it's like, I guess, it's analogous to like a Lightning network, for example, right? Where it's like fast payments within this network, but it's on Ethereum, and you can actually go and use that right now. If you go to Gitcoin, it'll prompt you to set up a ZK Sync account. And then in there, the transactions are super cheap, super fast, and you do everything on there. So you can make donations to like hundreds of projects, small donations, right? Like 1 or 5 DAI or something, and not have to pay those really high gas fees to do it. And then with Loopring and Diversify, you can go on there and trade really cheaply as well. And then in addition to that, there's another technology called optimistic rollups, which is coming out soon, which has already been demos for. There's a bunch of projects working on it. It's rumored that Uniswap is actually going to use this technology for their layer 2 solution. So yeah, we have like so many solutions now. It's just, I think we're going to get to the point where we need to basically not centralize, but basically coalesce around a bunch of different solutions so that we can preserve the network effects and the composability between everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to make really specific predictions, but I feel like Uniswap's a strong contender for leading the charge there. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, so I think Uniswap's going to set the standard with whatever they adopt. So if they adopt optimistic rollouts, people are going to see that, and people are going to be like, okay, well, it's good enough for Uniswap to use, so we should basically use it now. And then that'll become like a standard across a various kind of use cases. There are some that can't work. Like not every kind of use case can work on every scaling solution. We're going to need multiple ones. Like optimistic rollups is probably overkill for just payments. That's why we have ZK Sync. But from what I know, optimistic rollups let you do like the smart contract stuff, right? The more complex stuff, and that's why you would want to use them instead of ZK Sync for something like Uniswap.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so that'd be really interesting to see. And like I think it makes perfect sense because I mean Uniswap is arguably like the most important Dapp on Ethereum right now. It's from a DeFi perspective. So whatever they choose, I think is going to be a strong contender.
Yeah, exactly. They are the biggest, and they're actually using the most gas on Ethereum as well. So them getting off layer 1 and onto layer 2 is going to be a huge deal, like throughout the whole network, and people will notice that, of course. So I think that they are going to be the leaders here for sure.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, we saw like some of the big centralized exchanges like moving to like OMG for like tether payments. Isn't that right? So like.
Yeah. I mean, OMG network is another network that's been made for payments, and Tether has signaled adoption for it. I haven't checked how much adoption it's had yet. It's going to be a slow move, I think, because it requires all the exchanges to adopt it. Because Tether gets sent from exchange to exchange a lot of the time for arbitrage and things like that. Right. So we need all the exchanges to basically be on the OMG network so that the Tether can flow like through that network.
Right. And so I think that makes sense. Like just trying to get like that onto a side chain, like trying to get a major player like Uniswap into a scaling solution. And if, it's sort of like it's like the sum total of the marginal gains that you would get, I think would make a big improvement on the base chain for sure.
Yeah, exactly. There's all of that. And then there's also like scaling solutions on the chain that don't involve layer 2. And these are things in DeFi where you pull your capital together, for example, right? So we're seeing a lot of yield farming products come out now that let users just basically deposit into one big pool, right? So that's only like one transaction for a user. And then that pool goes and seeks like the profit, basically. Whereas if you were to have it individually, you can imagine that there's like 1,000 users doing 1,000 different transactions, more than 1,000 transactions, because there's multiple transactions involved in yield farming. Say like 1,000 users do 10 transactions each, that's 10,000 transactions. But say you have 1,000 users doing one transaction each to put it into this yield farming pool, and then that yield farming pool only does like a few transactions, So you have like basically scaled like 10 times technically, right? Because you've taken that load off the main chain from all these people, and you've put it into like one kind of like pool, which I think is another bullish thing that we basically don't need the technology to develop. It's already there. It just requires adoption from users.
Right. Yeah, totally. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I mean, Wi-Fi has done a really good job of like trying to reduce all the moves that people would normally be making.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about infrastructure and kind of what's next, I've been talking a lot about ETH2 on my channel recently. And I know that's a topic near and dear to your heart as well. So maybe we can talk about that for a few minutes, and then we'll wrap up here.
Yeah. So ETH2 is obviously a thing that's been spoken about for many years now. It's gone through many iterations, many kind of like different phases and things like that, and a lot of research and development to get to this point. So yeah, for those who may be unaware, currently it's basically at the last testnet phase. So we have the last testnet spun up for ETH2 right now for the first phase. So ETH2 is a multi-phased rollout. This is like phase 0, as they call it. But yeah, the testnet's been running, and we're very close to getting a mainnet date being announced, which is expected to be by end of year. Now, to just set some expectations here, this phase that's going live, phase 0, is basically a staking chain. It doesn't have smart contracts or anything like that. You basically send your ETH to the ETH2 chain, which is a new blockchain from ETH1, and then you'll be able to stake. And it's a one-way bridge as well, so you won't be able to go back for a while. And then the other phases, phase 1, it brings in the sharding, so it brings in the shard data chains into the mix. Phase 1.5 is when the planned migration happens. So we bring ETH1 into ETH2 as a shard, and we get rid of proof of work. So Ethereum just becomes like one whole proof of stake network. And phase 2 is when we actually get smart contracts and state execution, like transaction, things like that, on the shards. So basically, it's a multi-year rollout, but it's coming. It's basically like all the research is finished for phase 0, obviously, because we have testnets and things like that. Like that's like a finished spec. Phase 1 is still evolving, but it's pretty much like getting close to done, because it's just the shard chains. It's not like the transactions and execution. Phase 2 is still more of an open research and development project. And then phase 1.5, the merger, is actually seeing a lot of work done as well. So basically all this stuff's happening in parallel. If I had to put a date on it for the merger, I couldn't right now, because it's still like a very open thing. But that's when I think like people are really going to appreciate ETH2, is when ETH1 gets merged into it, because until then it's basically a separate chain where people are just staking and nothing's really happening on there. Phase 1 brings in the shard chains, which you can actually technically use as data chains for layer 2 as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a multi-year rollout, multi-phase rollout, but you'll be able to stake with your ETH at the end of this year if that's something that you're interested in. You just have to be aware that once you send your ETH to the ETH2 chain, it's going to basically be stuck there until we have this merger, or someone builds a bridge. There's no plans for a bridge at this point, though. So basically, the phase 1.5 merger is when your ETH's going to be stuck until, I think.
Yeah, there's no going back. That's awesome. Yeah, so I did a video on my channel recently where I talked about how I felt like we were actually going to see phase 0 launch in 2020. I felt pretty confident about that. I know we've seen this pushed back, many times. Like people thought it might be the beginning of 2020. You know what I mean? All this kind of stuff. So like I said earlier in the video today, I don't love like making bold, predictions about really specific things, but I felt pretty confident about that. How do you feel?
Yeah. So I guess like there's never been an official date, right, for this stuff. It's always been official as in given by like the research and development teams, right? Because it's a distributed thing, but they haven't all come out with the same date. It's been like sometimes like a researcher will say, I think it could go live here, right? Or maybe someone else says, I think it can go live here. And that's why there's been quote unquote delays, is because there was an expectation set and then it wasn't met. And people were like, oh, ETH2 is delayed again. But there actually has been many delays over the years, right? There's been many delays due to like research problems needing to be figured out and development being slower than what would have been liked. But the pace right now is the fastest it's ever been. The pace is really good. The teams working on it are amazing. The researchers are really, really smart. So yeah, I think like we're going to still see it this year. I've been saying November for the last few months, or last couple of months, I guess. I think we're going to get an announcement within the next few weeks about the mainnet date, and then it'll be live. I think, yeah, it's about time we just get this launched so people stop thinking that ETH2 is never coming, because it's just, yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah. And I think this is actually perfect timing, because we got a lot of eyeballs with DeFi, a bunch of people. We got some new blood in the space. We got some people kind of come back out of retirement, you know what I mean? Like back into the crypto space. Oh, what's going on with ETH, right? And so now that we're top of mind again, I think this is a really great time to be like, all right, we're shipping.
Yeah. And it's funny because I see a lot of teams doing that, not just on ETH2, but like a lot of projects are like delivering things. And whether that's a coincidence between like they waited till the bull market to ship their major products, or it just like so happens that people shipping products brought back people and the bull market heats up again because people are like, oh, this is actually real technology. It actually does stuff, right? It wasn't just all fairy tales and white papers. A lot of it was, right? Yeah. But the stuff that stuck around is real, right?
Yeah. And I think there is something to be said, man, for like, the amount of time that it takes to really make something that's provides value to people that's really hard takes a long time. And so it's like, I don't mean just for ETH2, but I mean like, I think part of what we're seeing right now with this DeFi kind of explosion and like lots of other interest in the space is, that bear market, that kind of 2-year bear market was a time people were heads down, like really trying to solve problems. And some of those problems like took 2 years to really figure out how to create something that was valuable to end users, that, was basically to get to MVP. And even with projects that are raised, the crazy millions of dollars, the ICOs, you know what I mean? Like a lot of them were still like new business ventures. Like people didn't really know what they were doing, like trying to solve like technical problems. So I think that is part of why we're sort of seeing this hockey stick like kind of trend here. I think that's one reason. It's sort of like the overnight success sort of idea, where it's like you didn't look at all the years where you were heads down, like nose to the grindstone in the trenches, figuring things out, and then it kind of clicks. And there's something of a natural time frame that I feel like that takes for other people, and a lot of people found it at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can look at projects like Aave, for example, right? Aave was worth, like their token was worth nothing for a long time. It got brutalized by the bear market. Their project didn't have any kind of traction, or their protocol didn't have any traction until the beginning of this year. Now they're the biggest protocol on Ethereum, right? Because they were heads down, grinding for 2 or 3 years, building a product that people wanted to use that would drive value in a space that is all new, right? This isn't like the traditional space where you can basically, everything's been done already and you just have to kind of like do something a little bit different and you can get some traction.
Differentiate,
right?
You got to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You need to do, like on this space, you need to make something with the tools that you've got, which is still evolving. So when the tools are still evolving at such a rapid pace, it takes a while to get something out. And to get something to maturity. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that play out. Like a lot of these projects that got brutalized, right? Their tokens and they were quiet. They were still building because they raised the money, right? And when they needed to. And that's what we're seeing right now, actually. In 2020, we're seeing a lot of projects raise money, and they may not go to mainnet in a big capacity until maybe after the next bull and bear cycle, right? Maybe they're going to take a couple of years or 2 or 3 years to get to that. And that might be what happens with the DWeb space, for example, or even the NFT space, right? To get to critical DeFi adoption is going to take a little bit. But I would pay attention to the projects that stick around and that are heads down building and still shipping during a bear market, because that's the real sign of a good team and a good project.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's great, man. Well, that's awesome, Anthony. I mean, I really appreciate your perspective on all this stuff. You know, your heads down in the space, watching this every day. You know, I follow Anthony on Twitter, and we've been kind of communicating back and forth. I did the video last week about the set launch for the DeFi Pulse index. Right. So congratulations on that. I hope that gets good traction. So go check out that video from last week if you haven't already. So awesome, Anthony. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here for today. So if people want to find you, like follow more of your stuff, you know, you're doing ETH Hub, you're on Twitter, where can people find you?
Yeah. So Twitter's got all the links in my bio to everything I'm doing. As you said, I do ETH Hub, which is like an Ethereum information hub. It's like a newsletter and podcast with my co-founder. I write a daily newsletter about Ethereum called The Daily Gwei. Work at Set full-time doing marketing there. And yeah, just like basically a full-time Ethereum evangelist. But definitely Twitter's got all that. So if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, Twitter's the best place to do it. And I'm sure you'll link it in the description below.
Yeah, I'll put Anthony's Twitter down in the description, so you guys can check that out. Give him a follow and find out, you know, sort of the minute by minute updates of what's going on in the ETH space.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. As you said, I basically every day grinding away, basically living in Ethereum.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome. Welcome to Ethereum. Anthony will be your guide.
yeah, that's it. Right.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm super glad we could do this, Anthony. You know, as this space kind of continues off, I'm sure I'll have you back on the channel sometime. We can kind of talk about what's happened, you know, since this video goes out. So awesome, man. Well, everybody check out Anthony. I'm going to put the links down below. As always, subscribe to the channel, smash the like button if you haven't already. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.